I didn't mean to come home. It was a last-minute decision. My flight got cancelled, my hotel overbooked, and something inside me said, "Go see her." But when I walked through the door, my mother didn't smile. She flinched. A deep purple bruise bloomed under her eye, and her voice cracked when she whispered, "Woo, you weren't supposed to be here." The silence screamed louder than any argument. My father, off on a yacht laughing with a woman half his age. That's when I knew this wasn't just dysfunction. It was war. And I had arrived just in time to uncover the truth they'd buried for decades. They say childhood memories lie, not because they're false, but because they're soft. Smoothed out by nostalgia, retouched by years of longing. I used to remember our dining room as warm, candlelit, filled with laughter. My father would tell terrible jokes. My mother would smile as if each one were gold, and I would sit between them, feeling safe. But when I stepped through that same doorway now, 34, and not at all the golden child I used to be, the warmth was gone. The curtains were drawn, though it was midday. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic. The dining table was bare, save for a half-empty bottle of wine and a pair of reading glasses I didn't recognise. I dropped my bag by the door. "Mum?" No answer. Just the creak of old floorboards beneath my boots and the distant hum of the fridge. Too loud in the silence. Then she appeared, thin, pale, a sleeve tugged down too deliberately, and a smile that almost held, but not quite. "Madeline," she whispered, not with joy, but with dread. "You weren't supposed to be here." I wanted to laugh it off. "Nice to see you too." But then she stepped closer, and I saw it. Faint purple blooming beneath concealer, just under her right eye. My heart cracked. "What happened?" Her hand flew up. I slipped. "It's nothing." Of course, slipped. That's what they always say, right? I didn't press her, not yet. I just hugged her, felt how frail she'd become, how much she flinched at touch. "I'm here for a few days," I said. "Figured I'd surprise you." She looked past me toward the door as if expecting someone to follow. "He's not home," she said. "He's travelling." Travelling. That word meant everything and nothing. My father was always travelling. Charity boards, real estate ventures, luxury conferences that blurred into vacations. But her voice trembled when she said it, and her hands wouldn't stop twisting the hem of her sweater. I excused myself to freshen up. The bathroom was exactly how I remembered it. Beige tiles, lemon-scented soap, the same dull light flickering overhead. But the sink had a red smear near the drain. I leaned in. Blood. And then I noticed it, my father's white shirt tossed over the hamper. A bold red lipstick kiss on the collar. I hadn't seen my mother wear lipstick in years. When I stepped out, she was pouring tea with shaking hands. "I'm sorry about the mess. Things have been hectic." "Where exactly is Dad?" I asked casually. Her gaze darted to the window. "He's on a yacht, some fundraiser off Catalina." I nodded slowly. I didn't tell her I'd heard his voice earlier that morning when I called his office. He was laughing, unmistakably, and there was a woman giggling in the background, a young one. That night I couldn't sleep. I wandered the halls of the house like a ghost, half expecting my younger self to come skipping down the hallway. Instead, I found dust, empty picture frames, and a silence that screamed. In the guest room drawer, where Mum used to keep birthday cards and receipts, I found a letter, unsealed, addressed to me. "If you're reading this," it began, "it means something's happened. Maybe I couldn't take it anymore. Maybe he finally did what I feared. Or maybe you just came home and saw through the lies. I sat down. For years I've protected him, protected you from the truth, but I can't anymore. He's not who you think he is. He never was. My hands trembled. The letter went on, detailing years of subtle threats, of financial control, of isolation, of her silent cries for help, of her failures to leave, and then the final line, "Don't let him do to you what he did to me." I read that sentence over and over again. Don't let him. My breath caught. I hadn't come home to fight a war, but maybe the war had been waiting for me all along. I woke up before dawn with a pounding in my chest, the kind of panic that doesn't come from nightmares, but from waking up and realizing the nightmare is real. I walked into the kitchen, made coffee, and stared at the empty chair where Dad used to sit in his robe, reading the Wall Street Journal like a king in exile. He hadn't called, not even to acknowledge I was home. Mum moved around the house like a ghost, careful not to meet my eyes, careful to smile just enough to seem normal. But her movements were rehearsed, robotic. I started to notice the cracks in the performance. Her hands trembled even when she was just folding laundry. She triple-checked the locks at night, even though we lived in the safest suburb money could buy. Something was wrong, deeper than bruises, older than last week. I started digging. Not because I wanted drama, but because something inside me whispered that I'd been blind for far too long. I pulled out old yearbooks, family albums, school records. At first, it was just nostalgia. But then I saw it, a letter from my old high school counsellor tucked behind my sophomore report card. She had praised my design project, said I should consider a creative college. I never saw this letter when I was a teenager. Instead, I remembered being told I wasn't logical enough for architecture, that I should do something safe like business. Dad's voice echoing through the years, "Dreams don't pay the bills, Madeline." I thought I'd made my own decisions, but he'd always been behind the curtain, pulling strings. That afternoon I ran into Mrs. Dalton, our long-time neighbour. She leaned in close, lowering her voice like we were sharing classified information. "Your father's been bringing someone around. A girl. Young. Pretty. Not your mother." My stomach twisted. "How young?" Mrs. Dalton shrugged. "Early 20s, maybe. Long legs, always laughing. He calls her sweetheart right in front of the landscapers. Your mother never says a word." I went numb. That night, after Mum fell asleep, I wandered into Dad's study. I hadn't been in there in over a decade. It still smelled of tobacco and leather and the kind of wealth that tried too hard to impress. The desk was locked, of course. But the safe behind the bookshelf wasn't. Inside were files, medical records, bank documents, legal forms. One folder had Mum's name on it. Inside, mental health records, diagnoses of anxiety, PTSD, mild dissociation, pages of therapy notes. But something was off. The latest pages were from a year ago. The doctors had signed non-disclosure agreements, all of them. Why? I downloaded everything onto a flash drive and returned to the guest room. My heart raced. I needed more. I needed to hear his voice. I dug through my bag and pulled out the old mini recorder I used in college lectures, then snuck it into the living room. Hidden behind the flower vase where Dad usually made calls. 2 days passed. On the third night, I retrieved the recorder and hit play. It started with static, then footsteps, then the voice I hadn't heard in years. "I told you, Jeremy, we can't wait. She's getting unstable again. It's time." Jeremy? My brother? I know, but pushing too hard makes her paranoid. Let her think we're sending her on vacation. A laugh. Right, vacation to that private clinic upstate. Silence. We need the new will signed before the end of the quarter. The board's expecting a clean transfer. My breath caught. This wasn't about care. This was about power, about money, about removing the last obstacle between them and everything they thought they deserved. I barely slept. The next day, I confronted my mother. Did Jeremy ever suggest you get help? She hesitated, then nodded. Your father thinks I'm fragile. Are you? Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. Only when I'm treated like glass. The name Jeremy alone made my blood boil. He was always the golden child, the one Dad brought to business dinners, introduced as my legacy. I was the creative daughter, the emotional one, the one who left. I looked him up. CEO in waiting of Connor Group, Forbes 40 under 40, smug in every photo as if success were genetic. And then I found it, buried in an old tabloid, an article from 4 years ago accusing him of domestic violence. The charges vanished, sealed. My father's name appeared in a footnote as executive counsel. Of course. I needed air. I drove into town, wandered aimlessly, and ended up at the bookstore. That's when I saw her, a woman at the cafe counter, laughing loudly, flipping her long hair. I knew that laugh, knew that voice. Caroline, my college roommate, my best friend, the girl who stole my investor contacts for a startup I built from scratch and left me bankrupt at 25. She turned and our eyes met. My heart stopped. She smiled. You look good, Mads. Long time. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked, Are you with him? She didn't answer, just sipped her drink and said, He never mentioned me? The poison had spread deeper than I ever imagined. He arrived like a storm dressed in tailored linen. Gregory Connor, my father, or the man I had believed was my father, walked into the house with the confidence of someone who thought the world still bowed at his feet. His skin was sun-kissed from the yacht, sunglasses perched on his head like a crown. When he saw me standing in the foyer, his smile didn't falter. It sharpened. Well, he said, dropping his keys on the console table, the prodigal daughter returns. I didn't respond. My hands clenched at my sides. He took off his jacket slowly, deliberately, like he was performing for an audience. You're not supposed to be here, he said finally. Neither are you, I shot back, not when Mum can't even walk straight. He raised an eyebrow the way he used to when I asked too many questions as a kid. She's dramatic, always has been, you know that. You hit her. He laughed, actually laughed. And here I thought you went off to college and got smarter. I found her medical records. I heard the recording. His face twitched just for a second, but then it was gone. You think you know things, Madeline, but you've always been naive. You see bruises and think you understand. Years of marriage, that's adorable. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to wipe that smug expression from his face. But then he leaned in, lowered his voice, and delivered the blow. She's not who you think she is. Your mother, she cheated on me 20 years ago, maybe more. The words didn't register at first. Ask her who your real father is. He stepped back, smiled like a man who had just toppled a queen from her throne. You're a product of betrayal, Madeline. A mistake. I couldn't breathe. Later that night, after he left, because of course he didn't stay, I confronted Mom. She was in her room, brushing her hair in slow robotic motions. She looked tired, smaller. "Is it true?" I asked. "What he said about me?" She didn't ask for clarification. Her hands froze. "Yes," she whispered. The room spun. "But listen to me. Listen, he was gone. He was always gone. Your real father, he was kind, patient. I didn't mean to fall in love, but I did. And then he died. Just like that, a car accident, or so they said." I couldn't think, couldn't speak. She looked up at me with tears brimming in her eyes. "If I had to do it all over again, I would still keep you, even knowing what it would cost me." That night, I ordered an at-home DNA kit. I already knew the truth. I just needed it printed, undeniable. The results came a week later. Gregory Connor was not my biological father, and my real father, James Weller, was declared dead when I was 5. A hit and run. No arrests, no witnesses. I started digging old news clippings, archives, public records. What I found made the hairs on the back of my neck rise. James Weller had been a financial advisor, quiet, well-liked, cautious. He had a history of opposing Gregory in business. Then suddenly he was gone. But that wasn't the worst of it. While flipping through a box of old photos in the attic, I found one tucked between pages of a forgotten journal. A barbecue, summer 1992, my mother smiling at the camera, me on her lap, and next to us, Gregory and James, laughing. Gregory's hand was on James's shoulder, and in the corner of the photo, a gun. Not pointed, not threatening, just resting, but real. I stared at it for minutes. Was it coincidence or a warning? The next day, Mum forgot my name. She called me Claire, her sister, who died 10 years ago. When I tried to correct her, she just stared, confused. I booked an appointment with a neurologist. Early signs of vascular dementia, they said, possibly from repeated trauma. The guilt crushed me. As I processed the spiral of lies and grief, Jeremy took to the media. I woke up to headlines. Madeleine Connor's mental breakdown. Family Insider speaks out. They published an old college photo of me crying after a project failed. Quoted anonymous sources about my obsession with control. Claimed I was threatening to sue the family over inheritance. He called me a bitter daughter, lashing out for attention. But that wasn't the worst of it. In the article, one sentence stood out. It's tragic, really, how someone born from infidelity would try to destroy the man who raised her. He knew. He'd always known. I closed my laptop, trembling. This wasn't just a personal betrayal anymore. This was war. I couldn't sleep. The lies were like insects crawling beneath my skin. My life, my bloodline, my family. All fractured illusions wrapped in silk and silence. I needed truth, not comfort. I started with the accident report. James Weller, age 38, pronounced dead at the scene of a collision. The file said unidentified driver, wet road, no foul play suspected. But the photo showed a straight road under clear skies. I pulled up archived footage, contacted a journalist friend who owed me a favour, and we filed a request to reopen the case under suspicious family connections. Next, I searched for Mum's old therapist. Most were retired or unreachable, but Dr. Janice Levy answered on the second ring. "She's your mother?" Janice asked, after I explained who I was. "Yes, Elaine Connor." A pause, then a soft exhale. "She used to come in every Wednesday. She talked about James, the man she loved, the loss never healed. Did she talk about Gregory?" "Only in shadows." She said he was the solution forced upon her. Your family had a name to protect. Your grandfather wouldn't allow her to raise a child alone, much less one born from scandal. And the diagnosis: post-traumatic stress disorder, severe but suppressed because survival demanded it. My jaw clenched. Did anyone try to help her? I did, but she stopped coming after Gregory made a donation to the clinic. I thanked her and hung up, feeling hollow. My mother had been imprisoned in a life built on grief, duty, and manipulation. And I had grown up thinking she was the fragile one. Then came the message, a voicemail from Jeremy. You're digging too deep, Madeline. Some secrets need to stay buried, unless you want yours unburied too. I know what you did in San Diego. My stomach dropped. San Diego, the startup, the fallout, the lawsuit. I settled quietly to avoid press. He knew. But I didn't care anymore. I returned to the house. Mum was asleep, the meds finally kicking in. I wandered into her sewing room, a place untouched by time, full of fabric and nostalgia. In the bottom drawer of an old cabinet, I found a folder, not labelled, not locked, just sitting there, waiting. Inside, a photocopy of an old will dated before her last hospitalisation. It listed 2 beneficiaries, Jeremy Connor and Madeline Weller. Not Connor, Weller, me. Assets split evenly, property, stocks, trust funds, everything. I stared at the signature, hers. Clear, unshaken. And then I checked the date, 2 months before the new will Jeremy claimed existed. I snapped a photo and locked it in my phone. This wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. I booked a meeting with a lawyer the next morning. Ava Lynn, sharp, unrelenting, allergic to bullshit. I laid out the documents, the recordings, the threats. She didn't blink. We can build a case, but it won't be fast. I don't need fast. I need justice. We brought in Clara, a forensic accountant. She traced suspicious transfers from Gregory's offshore holdings to Jeremy's shell companies, fake NFTs, inflated appraisals, art pieces sold 3 times in 1 quarter. I reached out to a trauma specialist to begin documenting Mum's mental and physical condition, especially the regression, the blackouts. Evidence that she was in no state to legally amend any will. Then I made the final call to Taylor Greer, a freelance journalist who once exposed a senator's sex scandal. She had a reputation for following blood trails until they bled dry. Anonymous source, she asked. For now, I said, but when the time comes, I'll stand in the light. We drafted a plan, a 3-part series, The House of Connor. It would begin with financial manipulation, then move to inheritance fraud, and end with personal testimonies. I felt like I was building a machine, one designed to strip my father and brother of the masks they'd worn for decades. Then the unthinkable happened. Caroline showed up at my door. She looked older, thinner. Her designer coat hung off her shoulders like a burden. She didn't ask to come in, just stared at me, eyes glassy. I know you hate me, she said, but I need to tell you the truth. I said nothing. I didn't know who he really was. I thought I could control it. He made me feel seen, wanted, until I realized he was using me to control you. And now, I left him. Everything. I'll testify. I'll give you everything you need. Why? She paused. Because I used to think love was manipulation. But I saw your mother's eyes the last time he shouted at her, and I saw mine in the mirror this morning. She reached into her purse and handed me a USB drive. It's every financial transaction he made with me, every NDA, every threat. I took it. Our eyes locked. This wasn't redemption, but it was war. The ballroom shimmered in soft gold light. a lie of elegance masking rot. Waiters floated past with champagne flutes. Laughter bounced off crystal chandeliers. The Connor family annual gala, where image ruled and reputation was gospel, was in full swing, and I was about to burn it to the ground. I wore a simple black dress, no jewellery, no gloss, just resolve. Gregory stood at the centre like a monarch, surrounded by CEOs, socialites, board members. Jeremy wasn't far, schmoozing investors with that plastic smile he must have practised in a mirror for years. I moved through the crowd like a current, unnoticed, until I reached the stage. "Excuse me," I said, taking the mic from the host. "I need a moment." The music stopped. The room froze. Gregory's smile vanished. "My name is Madeline Weller," I began. "Some of you know me as a Connor, but that name was built on lies, manipulation, and a cover-up that spanned decades." Whispers erupted. Gregory stepped forward, hand raised. "Madeline, this isn't the time." "It's the perfect time," I snapped. "This event is about legacy, isn't it? Let's talk about the legacy of Gregory Connor." I clicked the remote in my hand. Behind me, a projector lit up with documents, bank statements, transfers, encrypted emails, evidence of money laundering, forged wills. The audience gasped as images flipped. Bruises on my mother's arms, Caroline's signed affidavit, screenshots of Jeremy's NFT scam. "The woman he calls unstable?" I pointed to my mother sitting in the front row, holding Ava's hand. "She was diagnosed with PTSD after being forced into a marriage she didn't choose, silenced for decades by the man you will toast tonight." Security moved, but Ava stepped forward with court documents. "We've filed an injunction," she announced. "The state has issued a temporary freeze on all assets belonging to Gregory and Jeremy Connor pending further investigation." Gasps. Phones lit up. Live tweets began. "And one more thing," I said. "The death of James Weller, my biological father, has been reopened as a potential homicide. We've submitted new evidence. The gun, the motive, the witness." Gregory's face drained of colour. Jeremy bolted. Cameras flashed. Board members muttered among themselves. One by one, investors turned and walked out. Mom watched it all unfold with silent tears. Not fear, not shame, relief. In the following days, things moved fast. A judge declared my mother temporarily incapable of making legal decisions, protecting her from Gregory's attempts to move her into care. Instead, she was placed under the medical supervision of the trauma specialist I'd hired. She began treatments immediately. The forensic team began re-examining James Weller's case. DNA from the photo, the gun found in Gregory's storage unit, financial transactions that tied him to a car dealership that reported a missing vehicle days after James's death. All pointing in one direction. Gregory was summoned to testify. But Jeremy? He vanished. No calls, no charges on his credit cards, just a single message left on my voicemail. "If I can't have anything, you don't get anyone either." I played it a dozen times. His voice was low, calculated, and behind it something else, a scraping sound like a chair dragged across cement. We issued a warrant. Interpol flagged a private jet filed under an alias, attempting to leave from a small airstrip in Nevada. But when they arrived, the plane was empty. Jeremy had gone underground. Meanwhile, the Connor Group crumbled. A major investor, one of the few women on the board, released a public statement condemning the family's internal practices. Stock plummeted. Lawsuits piled in. Within 3 weeks, the once untouchable empire was bleeding from every angle. I should have felt triumphant. But then came the twist I never expected. While cleaning out a cabinet in Mom's room, I found a box labelled M. Old photos, drawings, a birthday card I made her in first grade, and a folder marked Caroline. Inside was a collection of letters, threatening, sharp. If you touch my daughter again, I'll destroy you. Stay away. You're poison. My mother's handwriting. I stared at them in disbelief. She had sent the anonymous letters to Caroline years ago when we were in college, when we started our business, when we got close. She'd tried to scare her away. Protect me or control me? I confronted her gently. She didn't deny it. She was going to take you away, she said. I couldn't lose you too. But you didn't lose me, I whispered. Her eyes shimmered. I almost did. And maybe she had. That night I sat alone on the balcony, watching the horizon swallow the last light of day. I had brought them down, but somewhere deep, a darker truth whispered back. Sometimes the cage is built by love, and it can be just as cruel. Spring came slowly that year, not in flowers or colour, but in the softening of breath, the thawing of silence. Mum began to smile again, awkwardly at first, like someone relearning a language. Her hair had greyed more than I remembered, and her hands trembled when she buttoned her coat, but she was present. That was new. She looked me in the eye, she asked questions, she apologised. One morning, while sipping tea on the porch, she turned to me and said, I wasn't a good mother all the time, Madeline. I let fear make my choices, but I never stopped loving you, not even once. I believed her. Somehow, that mattered more than I expected. Weeks later, Jeremy was found at a remote checkpoint near the Canadian border. He'd shaved his head, changed his eye colour with cheap contacts, and carried forged passports. But a customs officer had seen his face on a viral news clip from the gala. He didn't resist arrest. When the footage aired, him in handcuffs, surrounded by federal agents, I didn't feel vengeance. I felt something simpler. Closure. Gregory's trial dragged on for months. The courtrooms were packed with press, lawyers, former business partners, and more skeletons than I thought one man could bury. Caroline testified, her voice steady. Ava presented the forensic audit. I submitted the recordings, the photos, the will. But what sealed it was the re-examination of James Weller's death. Traces of Gregory's fingerprints on the gun, phone records placing him near the scene, and the clincher. A journal entry from James found in a storage unit. One last note, one last fear, scribbled in haste. If anything happens to me, it's Gregory. The jury took less than a day. 25 years for murder and money laundering. No parole, no redemption arc, just justice. In the weeks that followed, I was asked to speak at a university conference on family systems and intergenerational trauma. I almost said no, but Ava insisted. So did Taylor. I stood before a crowd of strangers and told them what I had once been too ashamed to admit. My name is Madeline Weller. I am the daughter of a woman who survived and of a man who didn't. I grew up thinking I was broken because I was told I came from brokenness. But the truth is, we are not the worst things done to us, and we are not the people who harmed us. We are what we choose to carry and what we choose to release. The clip went viral within days. A non-profit reached out, then another, then survivors from across the country. Letters poured in, emails, DMs. So I started something new, Family Uncaged. a centre for those raised in homes that looked perfect from the outside but hurt like hell on the inside. We offered therapy, legal aid, housing support, a chance to unlearn shame, to find voice, to rebuild. The opening ceremony was small. Mum stood beside me, holding my hand. Caroline attended quietly at the back of the crowd. After the ribbon was cut, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Daniel. We hadn't spoken in years. He was my first love. Now a trauma therapist working with veterans. We caught up over coffee, then dinner, then long walks filled with awkward pauses and old warmth. One evening, while we were sitting under the stars, he asked, "Do you still believe people like us can have peace?" I nodded. Not the kind we were taught to chase, but the kind we choose to build. He didn't say anything, just held my hand. For once I didn't flinch, and then finally we went. Mum and I to Santorini. She had once cut out a photo of the caldera and stuck it on the fridge. "Some day," she said, every summer. Some day when the house was paid off. Some day when Dad took time off. Some day when the timing was right. Some day never came until we made it. We stayed in a whitewashed villa with blue shutters. Ate feta under bougainvillea. Walked slow, laughed often. She danced once, barefoot, under moonlight, to music we couldn't understand but didn't need to. On our last evening, we stood at the edge of the cliffs, watching the sun bleed into the sea. She leaned into me, and for a moment we didn't speak. We didn't need to. I closed my eyes and let it all wash away. The lies, the bruises, the fear, what remained was choice. I turned to the camera one of the locals had offered to hold, took the mic they insisted I use, and whispered, "I wasn't born free, but I walked myself into freedom, one truth at a time."